Okay, so today's lesson is called Writing Slope-Intercept Form, but there's a subheading to this. Some of you are like, haven't we already done this? If you look back in your notes a few pages, yeah, we have a lesson called Writing Slope-Intercept Form, but it was specifically from a graph. So if I give you a graph, can you identify the intercept, the y-intercept? Can you figure out the slope? That's mb. And can you plug it into an equation? So for example, on this one, we needed to find slope and intercept. The slope was going down 3, right 2. That means that your m value is -3/2. The intercept was at -1, so your b value is -1. We plugged in -3/2 for m. We plugged in -1 for b, and that was our equation. Okay, so we're still writing equations in slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b. But instead of doing this from a graph, I'm not going to give you a graph. I'm going to give you a point, so an ordered pair, and the slope. So this is kind of your subheading from a point and the slope. Okay, so that's our specific lesson for today. All right, so let me give you an example of what this might look like. So I'm just going to write example. So if this was on a test or a quiz, this is kind of what it would have written. And I do want you to write this. We're not going to write it every time, but write the full directions this time. So it says write the equation of the line write the equation of the line that passes through the point, and then we're going to have a location here, a point, an x comma y value, passes through the point -2, 5, and has a slope of 4. So pause if you need to, make sure that's written down. Write the equation of the line that passes through the point -2, 5 and has a slope of 4. So here's one way you could do it. I have a tiny graph, and I know you're not going to be able to see this well, but I just kind of want you to visualize this. So here's my x-axis, here's my y-axis. If I know a point in the slope, what I could do is I could graph that point. So -2 up 5 would be right there. Okay. And then the slope is 4. Well, that's like 4/1. So I would go up 4/1. Okay. But you notice how, like, if I were to take a ruler and line those up, I can't really see the intercept clearly. Maybe if I had a larger graph, I could see it clearly, but I don't in this case. So we have to know a different way than just graphing it. Maybe your slope's ugly and the intercept's kind of a fraction. That can happen. Maybe the numbers are big. Maybe you don't have graph paper. So you have to know another way to figure out this equation of the line. All right. Well, if my whole goal is to write something in this format, then there are 2 things that I have to identify. I have to figure out the slope, which is your m value, and you have to figure out the b, which is your y-intercept. If I know the m and I know the b, I plug that in and I'm done, okay? Now let's see what it gives us. We have 2 pieces of information. We have a point and we have the slope. Oh my gosh, slope is already done for us. We already know the m value. What's your m? M is 4. So that's taken care of. So we know m. The only thing we don't know, guys, is we don't know b, okay? So we're going to have to solve for b. So what I want you to do on your paper is I want you to just write this equation again, y equals mx plus b. Now, let's plug in what we know so far. We know that the slope is m, or the slope is 4. So for this, wherever this m is, I'm going to plug in 4 since the slope is 4. Well, okay, cool, but there's 3 other things I don't know. I haven't taught you to solve for 3 things. I've taught you to solve for 1 unknown number, right? Well, technically, x and y, we do have some information about x and y. We were given a point, x, comma, y. -2 is the x value, 5 is the y value. So technically you do have something you can plug in for y and plug in for x. What number would we plug in for y? Well, we plug a 5 in. What number can we plug in for x? -2. What that means is the only thing I don't know is I don't know the b value. So I don't know what b is, so I'm just going to drop down b. Now let's set up with an equation because we know how to solve equations. So here we go. 5 equals, and then I have m, and this is m times x. Do not forget that m times x. Therefore, it's 4 times -2. And then plus b. I don't know what b is. B is what you're solving for here, okay? So in your notes, maybe write something that says solve for b. Okay, so if you want to make, if you want some little notes about what we just did right here, tell yourself that we plugged in x, y, and m. It gave you the m value. It gave you the slope. It also gave you an x and a y. So we plugged x, y, and m into the equation. The only thing we don't know is b. So we're going to go ahead and solve for b. I'm going to rewrite this over here. So I have 5 equals 4 times -2 plus b. Okay, well, let's see what you remember about solving equations. So I'm going to separate my 2 sides. I'm trying to get b by itself. Well, first I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to simplify this side. 4 times -2 is -8. Drop down everything else. Okay. Each side of the equation is simplified. So now I'm just going to isolate the variable. I'm going to get rid of this -8. How do I get rid of a negative? Well, I add. I'm going to add 8. Add 8. Whatever I do to one side, have to do to the other. So I add 8 on both sides of the equation. -8 plus 8 cancels. 5 plus 8 is 13. Drop down the b, and I get 13 equals b. So what does that mean? Well, b is equal to 13. Okay. We already knew what m was. Now we know what b was. As soon as you know the m and the b, and you plug in those numbers and you can write your equation. The equation of this line is y equals, okay, and what was our m value? 4. Don't forget the x. And then we plus b, right? B's 13, so it's plus 13. So your final equation is y equals 4x plus 13. Okay. Okay, so we are going to practice this, of course. We definitely need to practice, but I think it's always good to write down some steps. Okay, just in case you get stuck, steps are kind of good to come back to. So here's our steps. Make sure you have them written down and then let's talk. So step 1 is we plugged in the x, y, and the m. We plugged it into y equals mx plus b. Where we got the x and y is from the point that was given to us. A point is always x comma y, so be careful. You got to plug in your y to the y spot, the x to the x spot, okay? And then also in these problems, the slope is actually given to you. Cool. Solve for b to find the y-intercept. That's your second step, is you actually have to isolate b, figure out what b is. And then the third and final step is once you have m and b, you just plug them in to y equals mx plus b. Okay, so those are your steps. Okay, now let's do some practice. Here we go. I'm on screen. Practice. Here's your first practice problem. So here's the point. I'm not going to write the full sentence, okay? Here's the point. Goes through 8, negative 11. And then the slope is negative 3/4. So we're going to do 4 problems on this page. It's an ugly 3, by the way. Okay, starting with number 1. So I'm going to figure out what's what. Well, m is clearly labeled here, and I want y equals mx plus b. Did it give me a y value? Yeah, it did. Negative 11 is my y value, so I'm going to plop that down. Equals m. What was the given m value? Negative 3/4. And remember, m is timesing by x, so I'm going to put multiplication there. And then x is next. Our x value is 8 plus b. I don't know the b value, so I'm just going to drop down plus b. And that's what you're solving for, okay? So this is a great time to get a calculator, especially if you don't like fractions, but I know a lot of us just need a calculator, and that's fine. Negative 3/4 times 8. This is how I think of it. 8 is the same as 8 over 1. So if I multiply straight across there, negative 3 times 8 is negative 24. 4 times 1 is 4. So I have that. I can simplify. Negative 24/4 is negative 6. So I have negative 11 equals negative 6 plus b. Okay, so negative 3/4 times 8 is negative 6. All right, now I still got to get b by itself. So what do? Well, I got to cancel out this negative 6 somehow. Well, I do the opposite. I add a 6. Whatever I do to one side, have to do to the other. 6's cancel. Negative 11 plus 6 is negative 5. So I have negative 5 is equal to b. So I know what the m is, and I know that the b equals negative 5. All I have to do now is write my final equation. So my final equation in slope-intercept form is y equals m, which is negative 3/4, x, do not forget that x, and then plus b, but in this case, your b value is negative. So we don't do plus negative 5. That's just kind of messy. Just do minus 5. And that's the equation of that line. Okay. So we plugged in our y, our m, our x, and we solved for b. Okay. Number 2, question number 2. The point that this line is going through is 0, negative 7. And the slope is 1/3. Okay, so you could totally plug in your negative 7 for y, plug in your 1/3 for m, plug in your 0 for x. You can totally do that process, but this is actually a special little situation. I'm hoping that some of you see this ordered pair and go, oh, that has a 0 in it. It's definitely an intercept. If it's an x-intercept, doesn't really help us much. But if it's a y-intercept, b is a y-intercept. So instead of solving for b, if it's given to me, then shoot, I don't have any work to do. And in this case, 0, negative 7, that would be down here on a graph. That is your y-intercept. So what I want you to tell yourself, you don't have to write this part, but to me, this is like jackpot, cool. That's less math for me to do. 0, -7 is the y-intercept. So what does b equal? Well, b equals -7. So what this means is I don't have to solve for b. Now, maybe let's say you didn't recognize that, and that's okay. When you're doing problems, you might not recognize that. If you plug in the -7 for y, the 1/3 for m, and the 0 for x, you're still going to end up with solving b as b equals -7. So you'd still get that, okay? But our final answer here, after I plug in m and b, would be y equals 1/3 x -7. Okay, so something to just kind of watch out for. If the intercept is given to you, it's cool. That's less work for us. Okay, number 3. There's a point at -6, -3. And the slope is 5/2, 5/2. This is a great time for you to pause the video, try it out, see as far as you can go at least. Me talking. Let's see if you can do the whole thing by yourself and then hit play when you want to check it, okay? Okay. So I'm just going to label what I have. -6 is my x value, -3 is my y value, and I already have m right there. So now I'm going to plug it in to this format. So I'm going to start with my y value. -3 equals m, my m is 5/2, times x, but my x is -6, plus b. We don't have that yet. So check that you have this on your paper. That would be the first thing I look for when grading this, is that you plugged in the things correctly. Now we're going to do some solving. So I'm going to focus right here. I'm going to do the multiplication. 5/2 times -6. 5 times -6 is -30, and -30 divided by 2 is -15. Okay, so feel free to use a calculator when doing that, stuff like that. But 5/2 times -6 is -15. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to get b by itself. So I'm going to get rid of this -15 by adding 15 to both sides. -3 plus 15, be careful, use a calculator. It's actually +12. So I got b equals 12. Now that I know these two pieces, I can write the equation of the line. Final answer, y equals 5/2 x plus 12. And we add 12 because it's +12, okay? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. You are gonna try out number 4 on your own. It's your entry test question. So here you go. The point is -1, -8. And I'll be nice to you on the slope. I'll give you a whole number. Slope is 5, okay? So see if you can figure out what b is and then plug it in and write the equation of the line. Good job. See you guys in class.